is the media. And that's for a wide variety of reasons. One is that it's an easy scapegoat for just about anybody to blame the media when you don't like the media's message. Another reason is that the media, and especially what I would call the high quality journalism media, has been in a business crisis for the last 30 years since the rise of the internet, and this has led to a decline in quality at many institutions. Certainly, their journalism, which is never an easy profession, there are huge numbers of journalist layoffs, and about 20 to 25% of Americans live in places where there's effectively no local news, and local news is really sort of the foundation of the media, I think.
You mean local newspapers where there's like, journalists that are almost like muckrakers, right? There's not really that.
Well, I mean, now the muckrakers tend to work for a very small number of publications that that tend to be a lot larger and tend to have been able to weather the storm a little better. Although, it's no secret that the LA Times has had its recent struggles. It is a lot of outlets have been bought by billionaires, and billionaires buy news outlets for various reasons. Business operations is pretty unfamiliar to a lot of. They're losing money. The most successful general interest newspaper, familiar to a lot of billionaires, and billionaire-owned publications have suffered. And
this gets into the distrust of the media, which I'm excited to talk about here briefly. Let's go to that.
It's the Washington Post, which is owned by one of the world's richest men. They're losing money. The most successful general interest newspaper in the world, in the country.
See, folks, when this article first came out, I just want to actually speak here. When this article first came out, I honestly was instant reaction. I'm like, I don't fuck with it. Like, I just don't fuck with it in general because, just hear me out, guys. That was my instant reaction because anything I see pretty much from mainstream media, and I consider LA Times mainstream media, I'm so distrustful because, folks, this is what it is. The biggest liars in our world is the government, number one. Number two is corporate media, right? Mainstream media that helps peddle the propaganda of the government, the lies of the government. Number three is, corporations, whatever. And then a distant fourth is independent news people like myself who honestly, in my opinion, get it right more times than not compared to these. Because the thing about it, I mean, these are corporate controlled entities. Billionaires own these institutions of journalism, right? And so I personally, I despise. I mean, whatever you want to say. I'm not a big fan of the left or the right, really, either one. But one thing I will say is that 2016 when Trump ran, it did open my eyes. And I'm not a Trump supporter by any means, and I'm not. I'm really. I grew up far left, but I've despised both parties now. I despise because it's all a uniparty. I don't want to go down that whole rabbit hole. But I mean, I didn't really realize until YouTube really, but until independent media came in. But CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, it's all horseshit. It's all, it's just lies. It's propaganda. It's how do we get into the next war? How do we get into, force people to do something that they don't want to do? How do we coerce the public into, this or that. It's pure and simple. I mean, I now that I've spent about 4 or 5 years doing media, right, and I'm self-taught, never really thought I'd be doing this. I've started to learn though. I mean, it's all about narrative control. It's all about, I mean, it's a nasty business, bro, is the mainstream media. I mean, they're really hacks, bro. They really are hacks. Now, like I said, this is not to take away from some of the good parts though of it. So anyway, let's keep going with this.
Certainly is the New York Times, and they had the resources and the foresight to reinvent themselves in a lot of ways that other outlets haven't been able to do. And so what has filled the gap is, and there are a lot of sort of new upstart newsrooms that are trying to tell the stories of their communities and do an honest job. And there are a lot of there's a lot of nonsense out there that tells lies and distortions, and often they attack credible news outlets. So, and in the weed world, there's a lot of, and certainly in your audience, there's a lot of basis for distrust, not just of the media, but of government, because these institutions have been telling a lot of lies about the plant for some of them anyway. And
well, they've been stewards of government as well, right? This is the big. I mean, the problem has been is like the New York Times. I mean, they've helped. What? Let's be real. They've helped. They've always been for every single war that's been pitched by the government. Let's be real. I mean, that's a fact, right? I mean, CNN. I mean, they're clowns, right? Fox News, clowns. Both sides are clowns. Like both, but they're both. It's all the illusion of choice, right? And I really think it's funny, I like, as much as, you can think whatever you want to think about Trump, right? The fact is, we just watched that video with Jarrett, right? And his dad, or his dad, or his uncle, I think that's the uncle or his dad, who's a lawyer himself, right? He used the term fake news, right? Which is obviously a product of Donald Trump. So I think it comes from, I mean, that's a big reason why I think Donald Trump got elected. I mean, there's obviously been, I mean, yeah, like you said, a ton of distrust in media, because a lot of media has been to control the masses, right? I mean, let's be real. That's what, and that's why I think the more decentralized system, of independent journalism, people like, journalists that are almost their own entity, right? Like yourself, almost, right? Like you're your own entity with your own.
And so just to kind of take back up what I was just saying earlier, when I first saw this article, my instant reaction was like, okay, this is mainstream media. Fuck them. This is, I don't know. I'm not with it. And then, I saw Alex, that was part of it. And Alex, he is genuinely, like, in my opinion, there's people out there that don't like him, and there's reason for that, but he's a good reporter. He's like one of the very few, right? I mean, he really is. Like he came from traditional, like in terms of like someone that I've like looked up to and like has like kind of been taught, mentored me a little bit here and there, kind of, in terms of like, I don't call myself a full-on journalist, right? I do journalistic stuff for sure, but I'm more of a storyteller. I'm a combination of the two, really. But in terms of my like journalism, like integrity, like Alex is like that person, really, and like I said, so that's the only reason why I really like gave this a chance, and I wanted to sit down with Alex. I've known Alex, right? We've talked before, and I mean, he's a good reporter. Now, like I said, should he have shown some more proof? I think, just to answer, what the homie at West Coast Cure was saying. Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't know. We're gonna talk about that here in a sec, but yeah, I gotta say that. But the only reason why I really gave this a chance, honestly, is because it was independent media, aka Alex and Weed Week, right? Because he has his own entity, right? And I'm just really pro independent media in general. When I talk about, I can't stand I mean, it's like, bro, you gotta think about this. We are playing on different battle. Like to be honest, it's dope that Alex got to get his voice, utilize, amplified by Los Angeles Times, but in general, like even on like the YouTube algorithm, on the almost everything, mainstream media has the upper hand compared to us independent people, right? Yet we still are doing pretty damn well for, someone. I originally started all of this. Literally, I trapped my whole life, lost a fuck ton of money, had nothing, lived in my parents' basement, and I started this media shit there. And here we are now. I'm, in my own crib now, and doing it right. But that's the thing. If the incentive structures are off, right? If someone is bought and paid for, that's the problem, right? Anyway, let's jump back into this
publication, or Weed Week, right? Which I think is dope. And there's more autonomy, I feel like. And I think that's a good thing. It's decentralized. Now, that's not to say, though, there are, I think it's better always to have, the fact is our mainstream media is controlled by 6 companies in the world, right? I mean, that's underlying. I remember doing a whole report on it back in like my freshman year of high school. Like this has been known. So, it's good that we're starting to now break. The internet's allowed for, everyone to have a voice, but it's definitely something that, allows for just because, just as much as it's dope that it gives everyone a voice, there's way more outlets. There's also more outlets to potentially control and to manipulate and to distort. And so, I mean, now at this point, it's becoming an information war, not to take away from, Alex Jones' InfoWars name, but it's true. I mean, it's an information narrative control war. And I think, though, it is important for people, trust is the number one thing with your audience, obviously. And
okay, so like I said, this full interview, super interesting. We're gonna have more of this in the full-on documentary. That's great point. Exactly. You've seen those creepy videos of just all. I mean, that's how you control it. All advertisers. So, and one thing I'll say is, like, for example, here.
When you talk about the media, you're talking about one thing. But most individual journalists are something. I don't mean people working alone. I mean journalists, people are earnest and conscientious people who want to tell stories, get things right, and care a great deal about getting things right and being fair. And I try to do that. I can certainly say that Paige, who has been an advocate for consumers and for good governance in her work, it's really a profession that is a calling in a lot of ways. And the way that these incredibly most journalists who are very dedicated, climate we've all lived in, has made it very hard, has, I think, sort of disguised the honesty and the decency and the hard work of a lot of the journalists involved. And this is something, well, do journalists deserve their share of the blame for certain things? Absolutely. But for the most part, this is not a crisis in confidence brought on by the work of journalists, but it is now our job to regain the confidence of the public. And I think one of the ways we do that, one of the ways I've tried to do that from my newsletter is.
I disagree with that, honestly. Like, it is 100% journalists' faults, 100%. I mean, it's not 100% their fault. I'm sorry. It is absolutely, but I get it. They're put in positions where it's like, okay, this is your job. This is how you pay your rent. This is how you feed your family. And then there's, and that's the problem. That's the problem with not being independent media. And, anyway.
Is to be fair,
because I completely disagree with his premise of, yeah, these journalists 100%. I mean, if they really were, they should leave. They should stand up for what's right. There's multiple journalists out there that stood up for what's right and lost their job, right? Example, multiple different people at MSNBC that stood up to, against the Iraq war that got fired, multiple people. And so, I know it's different for everyone, but like, let's be real. The problem with these journalists is that they work for someone, an editor above them that has editorial control. And that's just a fact, right? So like, that's why I like independent media where the person, has control, over their own, they have to be an entrepreneur to a certain degree, right? They have to build their audience, right? But once you do that, you're only answering to your audience, not, the person that's the editor, the editor, and then that editor has to then, answer to the billionaire that owns the owns the newspaper, whatever it may be. I don't know.
To be hardworking, to tell stories that matter, and it's
I will say though, the thing about
that time like page.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. I know.
And folks, make sure to stick around because we're going to get into all the politics. This is going to get, trust me, we're honestly like halfway through. So
absolutely, and I think it's some great work that she did, that you guys did, and I will say though, the thing about, and like not to get too broad here, I just want to say on this point is the thing about being employed, right, is that there's editorial control, right? I mean, there is absolutely the power for certain, special interests that have, let's say own, are invested or whatever, like Jeff Bezos, right, with the Washington Post. I mean, there's inherently certain stories that he could, if he wanted to, cut off from going out, right? So, in my opinion, one of the few cannabis journalists really, out.
Okay. Anyway, in this art, and you guys, like I said, make sure to go watch this full interview. It's raw, uncut. There's nothing edited out of this. This is what we do. We upload these interviews to this platform. It's www.highdesign.media. It's a great way to help get access to the stuff. Like I specifically have to pay, instead of me just getting a Patreon, right? I wanted to use this server so I couldn't get censored. Because we upload our own, it's not like you're using YouTube, because you can lose your YouTube channel, and I don't know if Patreon does that now, but I specifically, utilize a service where I'm paying like $600 a month, to be able to have an app, to be able to, self-host